All right, guys. This set of notes is entitled Industrial Growth, 1865 to 1900. We've been talking about, and the textbook calls this time period the age of innovation and industry. So let's take a closer look at exactly what's going on during this time period. So, U.S. industry is growing greatly between 1865, and a lot of things are making this growth possible. One of the big things is that the introduction of the Bessemer steel process made the production of steel much easier and quicker. So it allowed manufacturers to produce a better quality steel at a more affordable price. Steel had been around for a while before this, but it was only made in small quantities and used for small things because it was so expensive and it took so long to make. Now they're able to make steel much more quickly and efficiently, meaning they can mass produce steel, which is a great building product. It's much harder and stronger than iron, so it's much better for building tall buildings. We also are seeing that electrical power use is spreading. So we'll see this with the introduction of household lighting, street lighting that doesn't require gas, refrigeration, sewing machines, all powered by electricity are introduced. The railroads are continuing to spread and they're connecting all parts of the country. So, not just connecting east and west, but they are crisscrossing all parts of the United States. And things like the telegraph and telephone lines are also spreading across the United States, making communication across the country much easier. And as the industry is improving and growing, it's leading to even more advances in technology that are related to this industrial growth. To help illustrate the point, in 1865, the government issues about 6,000 patents for new inventions, which is a fairly good amount. But by 1900, that number has more than quadrupled. In 1900, there were over 24,000 patents for new inventions issued by the U.S. government. Most of these new inventions, or many, used this new electricity and included things like the automobile, the refrigerator, and the telephone. However, it wasn't all good things. There were a lot of problems with, or a lot of issues that resulted from this growth of industry. We're seeing a lot more competition between businesses, and we're going to see the emergence of big business as this powerful entity. So things like monopolies and trusts are created, and they drive smaller, weaker businesses out of business. And these big, powerful businesses did battle with one another. For the average worker, your conditions were pretty much terrible, and often these working conditions led to labor strikes. In 1900, the average work week was 59 hours, whereas today the average work week is around 40 hours. And pay was about $10 a week. Child labor was very common, even in places like mines. And many jobs were extremely dangerous, and very few business owners were doing anything to change any of these working conditions. In fact, many of them used their power and authority to even more enrich themselves. So the most successful businessmen became incredibly rich and powerful. And some people felt like they were misusing their power. In addition to the conditions that their workers were under, they did things like bribing politicians to get them to pass laws that helped their businesses. They worked hard and sometimes cheated the system to drive their competitors out of business. Like I said, their workers had to deal with very unsafe working conditions. And workers who tried to fight and get better working conditions for themselves were often fired or kept from, and after fired, they're kept from getting other jobs. So you can see this cartoon we looked at in class called The Protectors of Our Industry, where we have some of our robber barons as one group, or as you might call some of these standing or sitting on packs of money, but they're able to compile or pile up these large stacks of money on the backs of low-wage workers who are working in difficult and often dangerous conditions. So the government does step in a little bit to pass some laws to try and control the power of big businesses. One law that was passed was the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed monopolies and some unfair business practices. But there really wasn't much effort to enforce it. Most of the government had this laissez-faire approach to allow businesses to do basically what they wanted to do. Businessmen worked to try to improve their image. Many of them became very large philanthropists. So they're donating money to charity. And their money helped to support schools, libraries, hospitals, museums. Some of the most famous of these philanthropist businessmen were John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie.